Incumbent French President Emmanuel Macron and Marine Le Pen are facing off the second round of presidential runoff. The French began voting this morning in an election that is said will likely amount to a political earthquake. Now, in recent days, opinion polls gave Macron a solid and slightly growing lead despite Le Pen's efforts to soften her image and tone down some of her Rassemblement National's party's policies. Meanwhile, millions of undecided voters are said to have cast blank ballots or abstained from voting, including people in Paris. Now, earlier we spoke to SABC News correspondent in France, Rosie Birchard.
Here in central Paris, the sun is shining. There's a very relaxed atmosphere at this voting bureau just behind me, this polling station, where French people are lining up and filling ballot boxes with votes that will decide on the future of who holds the keys to the Elysee and who is the president of France. And that very kind of jovial atmosphere here might belie just how important this election is. This is a verdict on the last 5 years of Emmanuel Macron's presidency and a verdict on the future of France. French people today face a choice between two very different visions for their country moving forward and two very different candidates on every level in terms of their policies and what they want for the country moving forward. So a very crucial day here in France. Voting now underway, about halfway through. We've had some initial turnout results that suggest some 26% of the voting eligible population has turned out to vote so far, but of course that is just a couple of hours into voting. It's slightly higher than the same time in the first round of elections, which was 2 weeks ago, but it is lower than the same time in the second round of presidential elections back in 2017. So perhaps a drop in voter turnout, although that could of course increase as the day moves on. Polling here closes at 8 p.m. local time.
All right, we are now joined via Zoom by the Ambassador of France to South Africa, Mr. Aurélien Lechevallier, to weigh in on the country's presidential elections. Ambassador, a very good afternoon to you. Ambassador, analysts are expecting a much tighter race this time around. Of course, in the first round of voting, President Macron bested Le Pen in that vote by nearly 2-1. How are you feeling today? Of course, this is one of those very crucial days.
It is a very crucial day indeed. Thank you very much, Unati, for having me. It's a decisive day for the French democracy. French people are voting everywhere in the world, including here in South Africa. We have 6 polling stations for the French community. And indeed, it appears to be a tough competition between the two last contenders, Emmanuel Macron and Marine Le Pen. So we'll see tonight the results at 8 o'clock. But indeed, it happens to be quite difficult to forecast.
Of course, these are two candidates with very different vision and views. France and South Africa have established a relation under the incumbent President Macron's rule. Are we going to see any change to the country's foreign policy, do you think?
Yes, there are two very different visions of the French society and the French foreign policy. Emmanuel Macron, as you know, is very internationally oriented, very business oriented, a lot of ambition for the relations with the African continent. Marine Le Pen, of course, she comes from the extreme right, so it's more a nationalistic approach, and also it's quite unknown because we had never had such a candidate in France. So we'll see what happens, but the consequences for the foreign policy could be huge indeed.
Let's talk now about what is happening currently in Ukraine. Clearly, the war in Ukraine has affected EU member countries, including France, and President Macron has spoken to the two leaders. Are we likely to see a shift?
Well, yes, it's to see the war back in Europe after so many years is of course a catastrophe for everyone, and we think of the Ukrainian people, and we stand in solidarity with the Ukrainian people after this aggression from Russia. But there is a time now where we need to end this war and to reach a ceasefire. That's why also the French president, and the European leaders have tried to reach, an agreement to see if through diplomatic ties, if a ceasefire could be broken. But we'll see how it goes.
Now, in my introduction, we spoke about allegations that are coming out of this second round of voting, saying that millions of undecided voters are said to have cast blank ballots or abstained from voting, including people in Paris. What's your comment on that?
Well, it's a tendency or phenomenon that we see more and more. Unfortunately, the lack of turnout. So we need to motivate more the citizens for them to be able to go voting. It's not easy to just build back this confidence towards democracy and the politicians and the rules, of our political systems. But I think that during after the first round, the two candidates have been trying to reach out to the people to let them, understand how important it is to express their votes and to cast their ballots. And so we hope that the turnout today will be more important and reach at least 75% of the voters.
Now, we spoke a little bit about South Africa and the significance of this particular, relationship. Let's talk now about the continent. Africa is watching the elections with keen interest. Are we likely to see a shift in terms of relationships between France and the African countries?
Well, it could be, indeed. With Emmanuel Macron, it's true that there is a strong African ambition and also this idea of reinventing the relations between Africa and France. We've seen major steps forward vis-à-vis the history, vis-à-vis the heritage, the restitution of art pieces, for example. We've seen also more dialogue with the civil society. So we know that approach will be quite open-minded and with this strong ambition for Africa. With the other candidate, Marine Le Pen, it's a bit different because most of the program or the platform is focused on immigration and security policies. And there will be certainly a new approach if the extreme right candidate is elected. So that will be indeed a major shift for Africa, depending on the results of the vote tonight.
Ambassador, we do appreciate your time. Thank you so much for coming to the show.
Thank you very much. See you soon.
Of course, that was Ambassador of France to South Africa, Mr. Aurélien Lechevallier.